Hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may happen to be. We're sitting here in Singapore, so it is good morning for us. I'm really, really delighted and thrilled to be part of this ADB Healthy Oceans Forum. Really quick plug at the start of the session. I know you're already on the platform. It's got a lot of bells and whistles. So I really want you to have a quick look around, check out the agenda on there. There are knowledge resources, speaker bios. There's a virtual expo, which is showcasing a huge raft of amazing solutions from around the world, all to do with focusing on plastic-free oceans, which is the name of the game today. I am Laura Beans. I'm part of the Incubation Network, and I'm really thrilled to be here with my team today, some of my team, to chat to you about really looking at how we can connect networks, how we can create more innovative opportunities for solutions to come through and help us solve some of these plastic pollution challenges. So I'm going to take us through a really quick overview, and then I'm going to throw over to my team, who are the real stars of the show. So I think this slide shows something that you don't really need me to be explaining. We're all here for the same reason. The latest figure that we've seen is that 8 million tons of plastic enters the ocean every year. So really it is a problem as big as the oceans, and hence we're calling today an oceanside chat as opposed to a fireside chat. 5 countries in Asia are responsible for roughly 60% of the pollution. And as we can see, being based here in Asia, things like rapid urbanization, unequal levels of income and changes in consumption patterns, lower levels of investment than in other parts of the world, and regulation that hasn't quite had the impact that we would have hoped across some of these certain countries, are all coming together to create this perfect storm. And to address them, we really need to think differently about a whole raft of aspects of that ecosystem, about how we build our cities, how we build and use our materials, businesses that we operate, and overall the economies within which we all exist. We are really looking to harness innovation and looking for market-based innovation to help us transition to a circular world. So a little bit more about us and what we're particularly doing to try and tackle this challenge. We are part of the Incubation Network, and this was established by 2 different organisations, the Circularity Initiative and Second News. Now, Second News is who the 4 of us on the call today here work for. We are an impact-driven initiative. We look to source these innovative solutions that are going to help us combat this plastic pollution problem by really focusing in on innovation at the entrepreneurial level of that big loaded term that we all use often, innovation. We try and do that through a diverse network of key partners from right across the region. You can see a few listed down there, but we believe this kind of ecosystem approach is the thing that's going to help us address these issues that are causing all the plastic leakage. You will hear us use this word network-based or ecosystem-based approach quite often. It's because this issue is so complex, right? We truly believe there's no silver bullet. No one actor in this ecosystem can solve the problem alone. If they could have, I'm sure we would have done it many, many years ago. So what we do at the Incubation Network is use our financial and technical resources to do 3 main things: super simple, source, support, and scale. So we first of all look to source many different solutions, engage many different stakeholders right across that ecosystem, and build that community around innovation. We then support some of those with our technical and financial assistance, connecting the dots, acting as a bit of a broker or a convener, I like to think, of this network to make sure that we're connecting supply and demand. We're connecting people who have skills that need to be matched with a barrier that someone might be facing in helping their solution grow. The last key piece of the puzzle that we're all aiming for is to help these solutions get to scale. So we look to secure financial and those relational resources as well to help those solutions get to investment. Noting that investment is not always the answer, and a couple of our team will talk a little bit more about that later, but really aiming to get these solutions to a point where they will reduce ocean plastic pollution. We focus on 5 countries in Asia. As we mentioned before, these happen to be the top 5 polluters responsible for over 60% of all plastic leakage in the region. So we've got Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines, Indonesia, and India. Doesn't mean we only work here. We often talk about working with partners in landing pad models where we might bring solutions from other countries into these areas or helping these countries expand through in the region. But these are the key focus 5 countries that we are looking at to focus on with the incubation network. Got a very quick snapshot of our achievements. These are up till the end of November last year, so hopefully that 99 startups supported will tick over into the 100. That's the amount of startups that we're able to support with either that financial or technical assistance through our own, the Incubation Network run programs, or programs that our really close partners run with us and on our behalf. Over half of them are female-led, which we're really proud about. And we ourselves have given over $1 million in funding to some of these key partners, using that funding in a catalytic way to secure that 1.6 million that you can see next to it. So we always aim to help our partners go above and beyond to secure additional funding, additional support to continue their scaling and growing journey. The key number that I think we're all interested in and why we're all here again today is that almost 4,000 tonnes of plastic waste diverted. This is something that we're aiming to grow every year, and that's the name of the game at the end of the day. We're looking to divert that plastic from the ocean. And one of the key tools in our toolkit is around mentorship. We have over 200 mentors on our mentor database. Over 150 of them last year were able to support entrepreneurs in our network to, again, grow and scale their businesses. So now I'm going to throw over to my team. I'm going to give you a quick intro to each of our team members as we go. We're going to kick off with Matteo. Matteo is the Director of Operations at Circularity and the Incubation Network based here in Singapore. So he's responsible for developing and implementing our entire program. He provides a lot of technical input to identify and accelerate these solutions. He's got a really strong background himself as an entrepreneur across many, many countries. So he's really focused on contributing and building to this ecosystem to promote that innovation across technology, business models, regulations, many, many aspects of the ecosystem. So over to you, Matteo.
Thank you, Laura. I'm delighted to be here and very happy to share more about the venture development work that we do in team. So venture development is the team that really looks after and works more closely with businesses, with startups, with early stage innovators. And we support those startups with a broad set of services, both technical and financial. Those can range from specialized technical assistance and mentorship, as Laura just mentioned, to address specific challenges, say, for instance, entering into a new market in the region, product testing, or perhaps support for achieving a specific certification that our venture in the network are trying to achieve. And in this phase of the life of the incubation network, which is a multi-year program, we are really keenly focused on moving ventures through their life cycle. Because our working hypothesis is that scalable solutions are needed in order to address just the sheer size of the ocean plastic problem, which you in the audience are all well aware of, and Laura outlined at the beginning of our presentation. It is sadly a massive problem that requires massive scale in order to be addressed. And therefore, we tailor programs to increase, for instance, the investability of the venture we support. We think that financial resources are a key, crucial, important factor to allow for scale. In that field, for instance, recently we supported the ventures in our network with a 4-day packed investment readiness bootcamp, which offered several sessions from a number of experts in many fields, ranging from understanding legal terms of a term sheet to partnership development to development of a pitch deck, to really equip the ventures to become more investable. In addition to that, we also have developed a deep infrastructure across the region that allows us to run programs supporting businesses addressing specific gaps in the market, or in a vertical application, or in the geography. As Laura mentioned, we are here building markets, so we understand that many stakeholders need to come together to create a market, for instance, for specific recycled product, recycled resins. 2 examples that we're currently running of this type of products are the Java Low Value Plastic Accelerator in East Java around Malang, and the Thailand Plastic Circularity Accelerator, another program that is geographically focused on Bangkok and Thailand. Those two programs are supporting ventures that focus on recycling, repurposing, or upcycling opportunities for low value and hard to recycle plastic. Think of multi-layer packaging, think of films, think of Tetra Pak, think of food wrappers. We foster connection with corporates to develop market for such products. The problem there, the market failure there is that these products don't have a value in the market for recycled materials, and therefore are bound to remain in the environment and then eventually leak into the ocean, and they're really representing a major input for product leakage. Another example in the area of specifically focused programs is a program that we've piloted in India about a year and a half ago that aims to aggregate startup innovators around the elimination of single-use plastic in the entire F&B value chain. F&B meaning food and beverage. I really wish you can stay tuned with us for this one. We are preparing to expand this program across multiple regions, and it will be really a game changer. And finally, we work closely with organizations in the region that are actually already working with entrepreneurs. So we call them Entrepreneurial Support Organization, or ESOs. We have more than 60 in our network, more than 60 ESOs in our network. And this is really a mainstay of the way TEEN works. We favor collaboration over competition, and we favor building relational wealth as a way to address societal problems like plastic pollution in the ocean. Working with these ESOs, we amplify their ability to support startups across the region. We leverage their existing strong networks of contacts among investors, among ventures, among mentors, among technical specialists, that they can then, therefore, we can then reach more ventures than we could do just with our resources alone. And through our entire effort to support venture, like my colleagues will discuss in greater details, we always make sure that gender equity and inclusion, as well as support for key part of the workforce, like marginalized waste management and recycling sector workers, are squarely included in the conversation. Our mandate as a program is to make sure that while we scale solutions toward the reduction of plastic pollution in the ocean, all stakeholders are benefited. So if the system enhances, if the system improves, all stakeholders are benefited, including those that historically have had less powerful voices, let's say, and less representation at the table to decide how this system should be designed and run. And with that, I'll pass it back to you, Laura.
Thanks, Matteo. Really great overview. And I think I love that you touched on as well some of the complexities that we face with getting some of these solutions out there. The materials themselves, the inherent value of different types of plastics tends to wreak havoc with some of the systems and solutions that we're trying to design. If there was just one type of plastic, life would be quite easy, but the multitude of types of plastic and makeups of plastic that Matteo shared is really just one of the many, many complexities that create some of the barriers in the system. I'm really delighted next to introduce Sandhya. So Sandhya is one of our program managers who runs our network development team at the Incubation Network. Sandhya really implements a lot of processes and tools to ensure all of our programs within the network development sphere for ecosystem builders, entrepreneur support organizations, civil society organizations, academia, right across the board, are efficient, seamless, and gender inclusive. And Sandhya is going to go into quite a bit more detail on exactly what her role and her team are able to do. Over to you, Sandhya.
Thank you, Laura. Hi, everyone. It's so good to be here. As Laura mentioned, I'm Sandhya, and I lead the network development team at the Incubation Network. So before I really talk about what network development we focus on and what our offering is, I do want to focus on the piece of the puzzle when we talk about our stakeholders. So as Matteo also mentioned a little while ago, is we favor collaboration over competition. And so we recognize that collaboration with these various actors across this ecosystem can truly magnify the impacts created by entrepreneurs and these innovative solutions that we see. So my team, we really focus on the top layer of the entrepreneur support organizations that directly impact and provide these solutions to entrepreneurs. So they could range from we like to use the term ecosystem builders internally, or capital providers, corporates, nonprofit organizations, women's rights organizations, and government entities. We really try to focus on that top layer to see how can we enable you all so that you can do your best work and enable the entrepreneurs themselves. So we like to do this by creating a membership network of sorts. And as I mentioned, we really recognize that collaboration can really drive us forward and faster. So this is completely free. What we do is we have over 70 plus of these members. And what I like to look at is the 3 C's. So it's across connectivity, capital support, and capacity building. So these are really the benefits and the member exclusive resources that these different stakeholders can receive with us. So when I talk about connectivity, it's really bringing together these actors. How do we make sure that we're creating strategic collaborations among them as well? An example I like to use is a member in India wanted to set up operations in Vietnam across and run a plastic accelerator program. So rather than sending an entire team from India, we were able to connect them with a member based in Vietnam who had actually run such an accelerator program the year before. And so rather than spending ample costs and getting their team out in the middle of a pandemic, we were able to set them up with this team and run a successful accelerator. So that's really how we function. We like to understand each of the value that we can provide to our different members and how we can connect them with each other. We also focus on increasing their visibility and credibility by connecting them with our extended limited partners or corporate partners and so forth. Another thing that they also receive across connectivity is access to our pool of mentors that Laura mentioned as well earlier. So that could be experts in their local ecosystems, a global expert that really focuses on what they're trying to look for, or technical experts across their ecosystem. Then we move over to capital support. I like to focus on this because when we think about the entrepreneurial ecosystem, all of that, we provide that financial assistance, but the technical assistance as well. So each year we focus on programs that tackle plastic pollution while also improving the livelihoods of women and girls working in waste management systems. So we run a cohort every year called the Inclusive Circular Economy Projects, and that we build a cohort every year. So we're coming up to our 3rd year and we're hoping to launch that in a month or 2. We also, as I mentioned, focus on members building strategic partnerships among themselves as well. So this might just be connecting them together, but also co-designing an entire program and funneling those funds to ecosystem partners that could be based in Thailand or Indonesia, and then combining their efforts together. And then we move on to the last C on capacity building. We don't always say that we're the experts in this space, so we really tap into the resources of our members as well, and we curate content and resources that can just not only help one member, but our 70 plus members. And every 6 months, we identify what they actually need to succeed. So last year, what we did was we launched a curriculum called Plastics and Circularity. And this was based on a lot of feedback from our members, what they wanted to hear, how could they actually just plug this curriculum into their own accelerator programs rather than creating a curriculum from scratch. So this is something that we launched last year, and our members are using it in their accelerator programs and has over 31 modules as well. So that's a big focus of ours, and we co-design a lot of toolkits with our members, because coming back to one of our core fundamentals, we don't want you to create everything from scratch. We want you to be able to access these resources and do your work as efficiently as possible. And the last key focus for capacity building is really that ad hoc one-on-one support that we provide, understanding that not everyone is going to have or find this massive curriculum useful. Great, we're gonna introduce you to different providers, whether it's on gender and inclusion or operations, we want you to be able to succeed in that aspect. So just to summarize, we do recognize that collaboration is going to drive this impact forward as fast as possible, and we do so by these 3 C's. Back to you, Laura. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandhya. And great little teaser there. We do have that program launching very shortly for some of our ESO accelerator or incubator partners across the region in the next couple of months. Matteo also had a teaser around some of those programs that we're kicking off, focusing on single-use plastics in the food and beverage sector. So at the end of the session, we will have a slide with how you can get in touch and ways to work with us, but keep listening out for some of these opportunities for how we might work together. I'm really delighted to introduce the last member of our team that's here today to share with us. So this is Sarah. Sarah works with all our local organisations across the region, focusing on gender equitable solutions that are going to improve livelihoods and social protections of the informal waste workers who play such a crucial role in this plastic circularity that we're aiming for. She works with organisations to help develop socially responsible supply chains. As we know, this is more and more important for many of the corporates who are sort of the plastic producers, and also consumers that want to know that the plastic they're buying and products they're buying are socially and ethically responsibly sourced. Sarah has a huge wealth of experience managing business operations and social impact projects across the US, Aussie, Cambodia, Asia, and has really focused on a lot of women's economic empowerment work. So she's going to share a little bit about this type of work that we do at the Incubation Network.
Thanks, Laura. Hi, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here. So as Laura's mentioned, I'm managing the Inclusive Markets workstream at the Incubation Network. So as we are promoting innovation in the region, we're also looking at how innovation might be able to bring along groups of people that are so vital actually to making waste management and recycling systems work, but also might be quite vulnerable to social and economic conditions and shocks. So really one of the main pillars that we see in our work, and something that we consider to really be a necessary condition to reducing ocean plastic pollution, is that there is decent work in the sector, that there is, that there are improved livelihoods, that we are seeing a really strong system there, and that we're also seeing gender equality and equality for all within those systems that we are innovating within. So to that end, one of the key specific things that we're working on in this space is working with 15 different organizations across India, Indonesia, Vietnam, and the Philippines to really kind of road test certain solutions towards improving livelihoods and gender equality. So we work with a whole diverse range of stakeholders. There are 2 different programs that fit underneath this umbrella of work. One is our Leakage and Livelihoods program, where the focus is really on the social and economic integration of the informal sector and experimenting with different degrees of formalization, different creative ways that we can work across sectors to integrate informal waste pickers and waste workers in general into this sort of the success that that innovation is seeking to bring about in the space. And then the second program that we have is Equality in Plastic Circularity. So that's really with a focus on women as the key innovators as well, elevating the ability for women to be able to participate in that value chain at all levels. So the range of solutions or sort of projects that we're supporting, many of them are working on research, or their solutions are based on their own research and deep local understanding. Many are working on very practical entrepreneurial solutions to these issues. And almost all of them are also touching on that policy advocacy piece. So they're working hand in hand with municipal governments and with communities as well to raise awareness at a household and community and business level. So what we do as the Incubation Network in all of this is that we provide, again, the financial and technical assistance that we've been talking about as key tools in our toolkit. We also wrap research agendas around these programs when it comes to the Inclusive Markets workstream, because there is still so much we don't know. We don't have all of the answers. And an example of a collaboration that we have in this space is that we're working with the Next Wave Plastics consortium of brands to pilot their framework for creating socially responsible ocean-bound plastic supply chains. So just to zoom in a little bit from that kind of system approach, we also work very closely with the entrepreneurs in the ecosystem to ensure that the ventures that they are building, the innovations that they are seeding, again, are gender forward. So we've worked with an organization called Value for Women to create some online training modules that are really directly targeted at circular economy entrepreneurs and their support organizations in Asia. They're multilingual across the countries that we're focused on, and it's really providing that practical guidance, again, at that entrepreneurial level so that they are well kind of educated and emboldened to work hand in hand with other cross-sectoral partners towards these solutions. So just very, very briefly on screen, I've just got just a handful of the examples that we're working on together with our project partners, which again are across all sectors, everything from different degrees of formalization or different forms of economic integration with waste entrepreneurs in India and Vietnam with some very well-established organizations, through to, for example, working with a startup in the Philippines where they are working with women as sales agents in disadvantaged coastal communities, for cloth diaper subscription services, refill delivery services door-to-door. And then another example here is WWF in the Philippines, which is conducting research and then testing policy interventions through a university program that works hand in hand with women politicians. So just a smattering of the whole smorgasbord of things that we're working on, and we'll look forward to sharing a lot of insights in the year ahead as we garner a lot of insights from these cohorts and publish them as well for the ecosystem to learn from. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. And I think really important and worth me reinforcing is that the gender strategy and the gender tools we have are applied right across the board to all of our programs as a key integral kind of goalpost for us to be focusing on that throughout all of our work. Sarah's work does take that to the next level, and we do have those gender focused projects, which she talked about as well. Now we're going to jump into hearing more from you as the audience. So what are you interested? What sort of things do you want to know from the team? Please use that Q&A function you can see to the right of the video and pop in whatever you want to know. We're going to go through 2 or 3 panel sort of discussions or panel questions now, but we have left a huge chunk of time, around 20 minutes at the end of the session, for us to answer those things that you're interested in. So I've got the Q&A box open on my screen. I can see as and when you start firing those questions at us. So please do jump in there. No question is too big, too small, silly. We really want to know what we can help you with, what you're interested in. So please do go ahead and start that now. And while you're jotting down your questions for us, for different members of the team, we're just going to jump into a few sort of panel questions that we thought you might be interested in hearing the answers to. So we're going to kick off with this one. So what are the benefits of an ecosystem or network approach? I'm sure you're all thinking, oh, you're a broken record, Laura. You've said this word so many times already, these types of words, but this truly is at the heart of how we believe we can make a difference. So I might throw this one to you, Sandhya, seeing as this is really at the heart of the work that you and your team run. Fill us in. What are these main benefits? Why do we even take this approach? What's it all about?
Definitely. That's a great question. And I feel like I might just sound like a stuck record because I'm probably going to repeat collaboration at least another 5 times. But it's really just building that community. You know, what I love with our network or community members is just the freedom and their experience and just the way they share their knowledge and insights across the ecosystem. So one thing that I did mention earlier is that we do have a community portal. So think of this like a Facebook, but this is where we get to share resources around plastic pollution, understanding what are the toolkits that are working, having discussions, polls. So it's really just that community, the feeling of, bringing together members and actors of this ecosystem that have a common and shared purpose and have a collective voice. So what I've seen is that when you are part of this community, you feel like you can move mountains just quicker and you don't have to carry that weight on your own. Another benefit that I've seen is improved access to talent and skills of a community. So one of the examples I brought up earlier was how members can leverage on their different local communities and tap into what are the skills can I connect with your team or a technical assistance provider. So that's just an improved access by being part of this ecosystem as well. And another thing I've also seen within the last 2 years of this ecosystem is just understanding the interdependencies. It's a beautiful map, an innovation map of sorts, where you find out that, okay, a member could benefit from another member's work on plastic credits and sharing those reports and what's working, what isn't working, rather than doing everything from scratch, like I've already mentioned. And I think just the bottom line is it really fosters that approach to learn together and just go faster. So coming back to it, it's just belonging and being part of a community. That's one of the benefits. So those would be my main focus areas, the benefits.
Thanks, Sandhya. It reminds me of the age-old saying that I'm probably going to get wrong, but it's, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I feel like this challenge is not one that we're ever going to solve quickly, right? It's a big challenge. It's what they used to call a wicked problem. And it really is going to involve all of these members of the ecosystem to go along this journey together. Thanks, Sandhya. So the next one, it's sort of continuing on with this theme of a system approach, looking at the ecosystem, looking at the system from end to end, I would say both top down and bottom up. Keen to explore, team, what you think about this and the importance of it, but not forgetting the people involved in the process. So we get quite hung up on thinking about, material design or about recycling technologies, but what about the people that are responsible for and help us actually get that piece of plastic that sits either outside someone's rubbish bin, sits on the tip, sits in a recycling bin somewhere? What about those people who are responsible for helping that plastic make its way into the circular economy, into that recycling process? And Sarah, I might throw this one to you, given that it's focused on people and you're our informal sector expert.
I was nodding along. Yeah, it's a great question. And I think, we see such a very clear case for this in South and Southeast Asia, where we have groups of people, namely informal waste pickers, waste workers, who are really working independently for themselves, but filling a very critical gap in a formal waste management and recycling system. And I think if you've got these, entire groups of people that are so critical for making the system work in the first place, as you mentioned, Laura, without them, recycling would be nearly, I think, impossible in this region at the moment, as the systems currently are. If those entire groups of people are kind of the weakest link in the system because they are being disadvantaged or excluded on a daily basis, then you're not going to have a strong, efficient, sustainable system overall. So I think as we're building these, investable startups, as we're promoting this innovation, I think it's clearly important to be taking the people into consideration right from the beginning. And I always think about how, we hear that in the design of a product, that the 80% apparently of the environmental impact, the future environmental impact of a product, is kind of baked into that design phase of the product. And I think it's really similar when we think about the social impacts as well of the innovations that we're undertaking. A lot of it is something that we can really get on the front foot with, and it's going to be much more difficult to reverse engineer a solution further down the track. So as we are innovating systems, as we are creating, whether it's businesses or cross-sectoral collaborations, how can we really start with the people in mind and make sure, again, that the entire system is going to be strong, effective, efficient, and equitable and fair, because we're actually paying attention to these very vital but potentially vulnerable groups.
Completely agree, Sarah. And I think there's a beautiful question just come through that I'll ask a bit later, but really thinking about the importance of both looking upstream and downstream. Again, I'm overusing these words, but upstream, thinking about material design, consumer behavior, everything that happens at sort of the front end of the plastic life cycle, and then downstream as well. So, hey, the plastic has been used. What do we do with it from then? How do we make sure that it makes its way into a recycling stream and the people that are involved down that sector as well? So really interesting. Thank you, Sarah. The last one that we've got here is really around investable businesses. So part of the key topical focus for today was really for the audience to help understand what do investable businesses look like in this space? What does innovation look like? And how do we get them there? So Matteo, you're our resident expert in this. I'm going to throw this one over to you. What do we do as the Incubation Network to do this? And for us, what does that investable business look like? What is success in this space for us?
Thank you, Laura. Thank you for this question. We do a lot to help build investable businesses. I mentioned before a kind of a really broad set of programs in support of helping organizations. We talk about startups, we talk about businesses. Let's not forget small and medium enterprises to really help spread tools and capabilities and really strengthen the capabilities of these businesses. We do that by providing access to knowledge. We do that by providing access to non-dilutive fund, a small amount of grants that perhaps allow a young entrepreneur to test a market or to test a product. We do that by providing technical support. We do that by providing mentorship. And generally speaking, strengthening the ecosystem. So if you look at, for instance, at the forest, the trees don't grow strong in isolation. They need microorganisms, they need bugs, they need ants, they need other trees, they need the soil with bacteria. So they need fungi. So there are a lot of players and actors and stakeholders that need to come together in order to strengthen and provide a growth path to innovators or businesses that are working to reduce plastic pollution in the ocean. And that is really what the team does. One example I mentioned just earlier is the Investment Readiness Bootcamp. That's about providing knowledge. We work with a specific organization that we identified as high potential to scale to provide tailored programs that are really around their specific needs. So there is an entire process of need and requirement gathering with that specific organization, and then from there we work on a support plan that could last for 6 or 12 months and include several financial and non-financial support types. We foster connections. We help opening doors to entrepreneurs and startup and businesses so that they can get access to resources that on their own they might not have been able to access. So really, one of our key pillars in the theory of change that the Incubation Network is implementing is really fostering the growth and increasing access to resources for the private sector, small, medium business and innovators, and really that's where we deploy a lot of our tools and support systems to actually get to the point where companies are investable. And investability in this space is a bit challenging. So it's very difficult to kind of just use the stereotypical investability criteria that you might have for, say, a social networking app or a food delivery app. Because as we've learned over the course of this panel, there are several different components and multiple stakeholders. The power structure of the entire system is very different. It's a very complex system with multiple actors. So what we look for, or what I think investors should look for, is not just the typical markers of investability, traction, revenue, or clients that are willing to give up something in order to access the service, whether it's money or partnership, contracts, or other items of value. So those are crucial and key. We also look at a demonstration of innovation potential. For instance, does the company have owned intellectual property? Do they have patents? Have they built barriers in other ways to kind of allow them to really thrive and grow? Do they have strong relationship with collectors, with informal sectors? Do they have provided productive assets on the ground? In this space, it's very important to have permits and licenses, land. Sometimes it's an infrastructure intensive or a capex intensive business. So having this element in place and running can be a marker of investability. We also learned the hard way that not every business in this space is investable in a kind of for-profit, with a for-profit model. Very often investors are kind of some investors are looking for market benchmark returns. And we need to kind of create a cohort or help a cohort of investors that might value other benefits besides financial returns in the equation of the total return for their investment, to bring in and to start the dialogue with the innovators and with the startups that we are supporting. We need to help our companies to become investable across a spectrum of capital types. From purely philanthropic to purely commercial, with kind of blended situations in between. And investability, the definition of investability for this different sector is different. And really, we help ventures in the network to tailor their fundraising strategy to achieve the right blend across this capital provider spectrum. So to summarize, it's hard to kind of have a short, simple, kind of single word definition of what is investable. We definitely see development of investability in the ventures that we worked with so far, and we really are hard at work and continue to work to make sure that the set of investable venture across the entire capital provider spectrum will grow.
Thanks, Matteo. And just to double down, I think on that complexity as well, is that local contextual aspect, so each of these 5 countries that we're focusing on, Vietnam, Philippines, Thailand, India, Indonesia, they all have very different local contexts as well. Local investors, everyone is looking for something slightly different, and every local solution is really tackling different challenges and has different barriers to overcome at their local level. So this word complexity keeps popping up as well. It truly is one of the most complex problems that we've come across and that we're working on at the moment. That's going to be quite a nice segue into jumping into hearing from you all. So there's been quite a few questions fired through on the chat. Apologies, I know you all at home can't see them. They are kept behind which we're able to get access to that list, but I can see them all coming through now. Some really, really good, interesting, and really meaty questions. So I'm going to throw to the team. So get ready. The first one I'm going to kick off with is one based on policy. And it's something we haven't touched on a lot in these last sort of 40 minutes, but it is something that's really important, as it does play a massive role in setting the scene, creating this environment in which plastic can be circular or it's not. So the question we've got here is, how can policymakers take urgent action to support this transition to circularity and attract investors and investment? I'm going to throw that to the team. Jump in. Otherwise, I can always add some thoughts as well. So I'll just read it one more time. How can policymakers take urgent action to support the transition to circularity and attract investors?
Laura, I can take a first early stab at this and put in my 2 cents, and then of course Sandy and Sarah jump in as you see fit. I think what we have seen of great help is for policymakers to look at initiatives that are actually fostering creating markets. So one thing that I've heard, and I keep repeating because I think really outlines very well, very succinctly, the problem of plastic pollution, is that there is basically a market failure in the life cycle of plastic. It's a fantastic material, incredibly helpful. But the problem is that we haven't really looked at the entire life cycle. So up to the end user use of plastic, it's all nice and dandy. After that, the negative externality are naturally socialized. They're distributed across actors with a voice, like humans, as well as actors without a voice, like the environment. And so how do we rebalance this market imbalance? And the policymakers do have an incredibly powerful role to play there. For instance, with EPR policies, the extended producer responsibility policy that we see more and more coming online, could potentially add the consideration of what happens after the end of useful life for the material in, for instance, packaging. And I think that their policymakers could really create a dynamic of internalizing what is now an externalized cost or an externalized negativity, so that it gets priced into the material, and that price creates a value that will incentivize and create a positive feedback loop for collection to improve and disposal to be more appropriate, and therefore to really strongly greatly reduce the leakage in the environment. So that's one thing that from my side, would be super powerful to strengthen transition to circularity.
One thing that I've come across in a few of the programs that we've supported is around consumer behavior. So really just the behavior change coming from the community itself, people speaking up about that, writing into their governments and policymakers into address this, take urgent action. We're not going to be buying sachets, or say no to plastic straws, for example, in F&B chains. So one thing that we've seen in the program is within the year, they actually created a coalition with policymakers, government entities, and citizens of the community in Philippines. That was where the program was run. And that just showed that there's a collective voice and urgency coming from the citizens that this needs to be addressed. And it's something that is going to take time, but having a coalition such as that, signing petitions from, thousands and even millions of citizens, that really shows that urgency coming from the population, the community itself, that policies need to be enforced and they need to be put in place towards circularity. So that's something that I have seen where they have taken more of an urgent action to support this.
Thanks, Sandhya. Thanks, Matteo. Such a great question. And we've actually just had another one come through. Quite related. It says, what are the factors that need to be in place for governments to be more open to these innovative solutions? Now, Matteo did touch on a little bit of that. The question says, some governments, in particular regulatory agencies, are a bit more adverse due to risks that are often really present in this space. And what do we do about that as the Incubation Network?
I think something that is quite unique that the Incubation Network is doing in this space is allowing for experimentation by the private sector, whereby we can create data points that then will influence the policy makers. So we're seeing that with quite a few of the projects that we're supporting under the Inclusive Markets programs, is that by providing flexible financing and support, really holistic support to, say, a startup that's testing a new model for waste collection in a community, then they are able to create data points that they can then present to the government in their kind of policy advocacy efforts. And we are actually already seeing some early examples. We've just had one in Vietnam where, a social enterprise that we work with was able to present the success of a program that we helped them to pilot that they might not have otherwise been able to actually pilot, purely on their own, but with our support, they were able to gather data points to take to the, perhaps more risk-averse policymakers who are, understandably risk-averse when it comes to some of these very kind of creative out-of-the-box solutions because they're representing their communities. But then to be able to actually take data to the governments and then form a real cross-sectoral collaboration. Again, we're seeing some early examples of where that can actually be very effective. So I think that role in supporting innovation in a way that can then really be catalytic to some broader changes in the enabling environment, which then hopefully creates that, that virtuous cycle of that enabling environment then promoting more innovation and particularly transformative solutions that can be scaled.
Yeah. Thanks, Sarah. Completely agree. And this de-risking question or de-risking challenge is a huge one. And I think what Sarah's just outlined is the fact that we can de-risk by playing with actors further down the chain. It helps governments realize that if we can partner with a corporate who's willing to secure what we call an offtake agreement to buy a huge amount of material, of post-consumer recyclable material, that then creates the opportunity for the rest of the value chain to invest because they have assurance that there's going to be someone who's providing the cash at the end. It creates this kind of de-risking environment in which the government is as this person has quite rightly said, the government is often very risk adverse, and it's quite natural. But there are multiple different tools and multiple different approaches that we can take to create this kind of policy environment. We're definitely not short on EPR, on extended producer responsibility regulations. They're popping up left, right, and centre. Most of the governments across the region do have EPR requirements. Limited success so far from what we've seen. It's not really our bread and butter. There are multiple organisations that really focus in on this one aspect, the policy aspect of the plastic problem. So we try not to replicate work. Matteo mentioned before, for us, we're never about competition. We're always about collaboration. So we try and leave parts of this which are already being addressed by other organisations to them, and we look to other partners to advise on EPR, including our partner that runs the Incubation network, the Circulate initiative, to give them a quick plug. They do a lot of work in this space and have some really great partners who often advise governments and work in that space as well. Next question. They're coming through thick and fast. We've got a really nice one here around, are we all about waste diversion, or are we all about preventing the plastic use in the first place? I think it's an and for me. I'm going to throw over to the team. So the question, word for word, is your focus more on diverting plastic waste streams or preventing plastic use in the first place? Which is your top priority?
Boys, I'll try again, give my first thought. I'm sure that we all have very strong opinions on this. I would say, so, in every system design or system solution classes, one of the first things that is mentioned is the bathtub example, right? You have a bathtub that is overflowing. Yes, you can keep mopping water out of the floor, but you also have to look to turn off the tap. And so I think as system solution practitioner, we actually try to do the same in the incubation network. I can speak from the standpoint of ventures, for instance. So where do we see solution? We see solution across the entire spectrum, and we support solution across the entire spectrum. We work with innovators that are developing a very large set of new and innovative materials, new and innovative business models where we take the single-use container, for instance, out of the cycle of delivering products to customers through refillable models, for instance, or to reusable packaging models. We see new materials coming from various biomaterials, could be leftover from fisheries. All sorts of kind of new chemical composition that will be less impactful at the end of the life cycle for those materials. We work, of course, also at the other end of the pipe, so towards the tail end, where there is more focus perhaps on infrastructure. There, the materials are already in place, and so you need to process them, collect them, and there also we look at the entire set of a broad set of solutions. Some are more traditional, like mechanical recycling. Some are more, let's say, less traditional, or more on the edge of innovation, where we could look at molecular recycling, for instance, or advanced recycling, as well as reuse, so upcycling of materials. So we really look at the entire, from a system perspective, at the entire life cycle, from the initial molecules all the way to the final end product, and potentially looping back the same material for other useful life cycle in a more of a circular approach.
Sandhya or Sarah, you want to jump in on that one? Or I can flick over to the last question I think we have time for. All good. All right. So last one, I think, just watching the clock. Really nice one. And I think everybody probably has something to share on this. What are the challenges and roadblocks you have seen with supporting startups across Asia and the Pacific? Beautiful question. So many answers to this. So one more time, challenges and roadblocks that we have seen in our work with startups across the region.
I mean, I think one of the things that we can all probably relate to is just the the broad variety of contexts and conditions in all of the different countries that we're working in. They're certainly not all, the same. And I think having to adapt our approach to the local context is really important and can be really challenging. Each of those startups is facing really unique sets of challenges in each of the countries that they're working in. Also, I want to just say, especially over the last few years, because we are working in these systems that are really operating, they're frontline systems a lot of the time, and there have been challenges with, of course, the pandemic. A lot of the solutions that my team is working with, for example, is reliant on informal waste workers who are then faced with numerous more challenges because of the pandemic. All of a sudden, their frontline workers being exposed to huge amounts of risk, and just I think it really. I've just come to see the vulnerabilities in some of the areas, the environments that we're working in. We just had a huge typhoon rip through the Philippines at the end of last year, and just seeing how all of these things fit together, where a startup is going to, of course, divert its resources to deal with relief efforts in its community if there are things going on at a scale much larger than itself. So again, I think it comes down to being able to be really flexible in our support of startups and recognizing that they all, that there are many different kind of facets to a system that we need to be paying attention to, and that startups themselves don't operate in a silo. They're not operating on their own, separate to other, sectors. They're not operating in a silo separate to the conditions going on in the world and in their local communities. So again, just, having that broad view and being able to zoom in on local conditions and just be really flexible to them, I think has been kind of a challenge that we've been grappling with in recent years.
Yeah, great points here. And I was actually ironically just thinking, hey, we haven't talked about COVID yet. How did we get through 50 minutes?
Sorry to be the one to bring it up.
COVID. No, I mean, it had to come up. And it's a really great reinforcement that a lot of these systems, a lot of these solutions are fragile. The fragility means they're just one shock away from crisis. And it is such a beautiful example. I think the Philippines, there's multiple examples across many of our countries every year, which pushes some of these very fragile recycling systems into crisis mode. So yeah, beautiful example. And yes, we did have to talk about COVID. Matteo, Sandia, I think we've got a couple more minutes. Anyone want to add anything to that question? Main barriers or challenges we've seen across our work?
So, I mean, given the audience, I would add just literally a few second pitch towards investors that might be present in the audience. It would be lovely to actually see more investors coming and learning about this segment of this industry. It's an industry that have, in my opinion, great potential for the future. It does require maybe a slightly less traditional approach, and we need the participation of, as I said before, of a broad set of potential capital providers. Because, as you said, Laura, the fragility means that sometimes there is a need for de-risking, which requires specific type of capital that then might unlock opportunities for follow-on capital providers to actually benefit from the de-risking at the beginning. So one challenge could be to really broaden the participation and help increase the understanding of the investability in this segment from a broader set of investors.
Thanks, Matteo. I think that investment discussion is one that I know you and I could continue on for the next 2 hours. If anyone wants to stick around, it is another whole kettle of fish, but a really, really important piece of the puzzle. I think that's about it. I'm going to do a quick wrap up, a couple of shout outs, and that will be us for the hour. I think, first of all, just want to say thanks to our sponsors. I realized that wasn't something we had on an early slide. Saved it for the end. So we are from Second News, working with the Circulate initiative to run this program called the Incubation Network. Support from funders, Global Affairs Canada, Alliance to End Plastic Waste, the ECA Family Foundation based in Thailand, and the Prevent Waste Alliance, who are supporting us with the food and beverage single-use plastic specific work that Matteo mentioned before. So a lot of really, really exciting programs coming up. We've got a couple more years left to run in the current form. These really collaborative projects work across all phases of that spectrum. We're working with startups, we're working with ESOs, working with corporates, working with investors. If you're sitting out there listening to us today, it's likely that we would love you in our network. please do flick us a message, contact any of us. You can jump on the website, email hello@the-incubation or at incubationnetwork.com. We are always looking for new partners. This is on our plastic mission, right? So as we know, we've been talking about plastics for the last 55 minutes. We are always looking for new missions as well. For us, the name of the game is building sustainable economies. And when we say sustainable, we mean for both people and the planet, right? And by bringing organizations and groups together that we've shared with you today, we've been able to achieve a huge raft of things in this space, particularly for plastics. It is really the perfect ESG tool. And as we know, investors, corporates, companies are being held to these ESG objectives as opposed to just the old bottom line profit loss kind of statements. The world has moved on, and we've built this tool, we've built this infrastructure to tackle system change. And we truly believe that this is the way we're going to change some of these complex systems. We are excited about what's next, both in the plastic space, but also in these other areas that we're starting to think about. Decarbonisation is a hot one. Blue carbon, there's so many organizations and challenges in this area that we're really excited to start thinking about. Increasing equality in economies. So we talk about sustainable economies. They need to be sustainable and equitable for all. So that's another thing we're also thinking about. There's multiple other aspects of the circular economy. I mean, textiles always comes to mind, especially because we're in Asia. It's a very, very apt and relevant challenge, textile circularity, especially when you build in the equality aspect to that. And the work that Sarah's been doing with the informal sector for plastics is so applicable if we bump over to the textile sector. That's my call to action for you. We are looking for people who will help us influence future challenges, support solutions, act as mentors, give investment, help support pilots, help work with our local governments, both municipal, regional. All layers, all parties within this ecosystem are there. We've got them. We've got this infrastructure. They're ripe for the taking. We would love to get involved and work with you to either continue on with this plastic journey or to start pushing into some of these new frontiers where we see there's just as many wicked challenges that we're ready to solve. So on that note, just want to do a quick thank you to everybody who's joined us for the last hour. Hope it's been interesting, useful, you've taken something away from it. And one more quick plug for the platform. Please do have a look around the amazing ADB Healthy Oceans forum. There are all those 40 plus solutions sitting there for you to explore. There is a huge amount of knowledge, resources, assets, bits and pieces for you to dig into. So have a look. Thank you for your time again. And we look forward to hopefully connecting with you after the call at some stage. Take care.